Hello, I am PB Saltman, and this is how I built a Tango Skiff 14. I started by buying 6 sheets of plywood from Menards and a plan online. Next, I drew rough cut lines from the plan onto the plywood. I will include links to everything that I bought throughout the project in the description. All the lines are straight and easy cuts to split the plywood into more manageable chunks. I used a tape measure, a level as a straight edge, and a small circular saw. Next, I had to make the plywood sheets longer because the sheets that I bought were only 8 feet long, as opposed to the 14 that I needed. The process of scarfing includes cutting the 2 sheets at the same angle, which me and my father rigged up a jig to do. Astute viewers may notice that these boards are not all the same. I had to do this cut 8 times and recorded 6 different ones. I used a bigger circular saw with an Elena blade to cut the plywood. Then, we flipped one sheet over and used Gorilla Glue to adhere the 2 sheets together. We clamped the 2 sheets together and let the glue cure. We also put parchment paper down so that we did not glue the boards to the table. The Gorilla Glue expanded and bubbled, which left a residue that I had to clean off. Thankfully, the glue did not adhere to any of the parchment. All 4 bottom planks of my boat are made this way, even though I only recorded the process for 2 of them. After undoing the clamps, I scraped the glue off with the blade from a plane. This was very satisfying, even though I had to be careful not to damage the wood. The joints are eventually strengthened with fiberglass cloth on both sides. After gluing the 2 individual sheets together to make one longer sheet, I had to trace out the final cut and then cut it with a circular saw. To draw the curves required to be cut, I used a thin piece of wood that I was able to bend around the curve. I placed small nails at different points along the curve. I bent the wood around the nails while using them to hold it in place. This was how I drew the smooth curves to be cut. The circular saw did fine with the curves as long as they were not too sharp. I bought the plans from www.tangoskiff.com for $30. This boat was picked out because of the numerous examples of DIYers that had already built it. The 2 bottom panels are larger and have a more contoured shape, which directs how they will be bent. Because as the wood is pulled together, some places will get pulled tighter and have to bend into the proper deep V shape. I repeated this process again for the other bottom piece and cut out the side pieces. I should mention that all the plywood that had to get bent in order to fit was 3/8 of an inch and the rest was 1/2 inch. The bulkheads, transom, seats, and center console all got cut out of the thicker wood. My boat is built using the stitch and glue method of construction. This involved drilling lots of small holes evenly spaced on both of the pieces of wood that you want to attach. Then you can use wire, or in my case cable ties, to pull the 2 pieces of wood together and then bend them into the right shape. It is very important to align the holes because otherwise the boards will pull together skew-whiffed. All of the holes are drilled on both sides of the bottom boards and one side of the top boards. I used a ruler and a pencil to mark out the holes before drilling them. I drilled on another board to prevent the back of the wood from blowing out, as well as sanding the holes afterwards to make sure that they were clean. I enlisted the help of one of my friends to start the bending process. We put zip ties through all of the holes in the bottom 2 boards. We were not able to bend the front of the boards together, so I let the board set overnight to allow the wood to bend and form into its new shape before pulling even tighter on the zip ties. Because the front of the boat was so far apart, I had to use several zip ties for one single hole. After letting it sit, I was able to pull it tight and replace it with one singular zip tie per hole. The 2 side panels are attached in the same manner as the 2 bottom pieces. Even after getting the 4 boards secured together, the boat was still really loosey-goosey and did not settle until I installed the transom. Next, I drew and cut out the bulkheads and seats with more 1/2 inch plywood. There were lots of tight curves to be cut into these sheets. I enlisted the help of a friend for holding and drawing with me. Some of these curves should not have been cut out with a circular saw, but I did it anyways. This project has really tested my problem-solving ability and allowed me to grow as an engineer. The bulkheads did not fit into the boat, so I had to trim them to size. I sadly am not able to actually cut wood with my hand, as you can see by the not so great jump cuts. I trimmed the farthest forward bulkhead and got it to mostly fit. Next, I cut out the middle seat and bulkhead. The middle bulkhead has a drainage hole in the bottom. Because it is between the floorboards, and there needs to be a way for water to drain to the back of the boat. Some of the curves on the seat were much too sharp to be cut with a circular saw, but that didn't stop me again. Thankfully, I had a small circular saw with a small blade, which is the only reason I could even attempt some of these cuts. There was a lot of fussing and sanding, and I should have definitely used a different saw. I also used a drill press to drill a drainage hole in the bottom. I attached a circular bit and drilled lots of holes. Surprise, surprise, this one didn't fit either. Some more trimming off of the sides. Thankfully the bottom was fine and only the sides needed attention. It was a fun challenge, trimming and filming the scene to make a resemblance of a jump cut. I cut out the first transom and the farthest rear seat from the same sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. The rear seat has some curves as well as a notch for the motor cables like power, gas, and throttle, while the transom is all straight cuts. The notch allows the gas tank to sit underneath the seat and not have anything going over the seat. The rounded part of the notch was made using a router and a circular jig. Next, I drew and cut the second transom piece. The transom on this boat is made from 2 sheets of 1/2-inch plywood glued together, making 1 full inch of wood. As you can see in the video, my dog was very interested in the process and would come and check in on me. We used epoxy as the glue, making sure to coat both sides evenly before putting the whole thing in a vacuum bag. This uses outside air pressure to evenly hold the 2 sheets together. The bag is held together by a pipe and a half pipe that goes around the bag and the first pipe to seal the whole thing. We turned on the pump and sucked all of the air out, while checking to make sure it stayed level. There were some small leaks in our setup, meaning that we had to keep turning the pump on to maintain the vacuum. It was easy to remove and not too much cleanup was required. It was also fun to open the bag and hear all of the air rushing back in. Apologies for the shaky shadows, I was working under a tree and it was very windy. I had to trim the sides of the transom because I did not cut or glue perfectly, and it was very important that the sides were flat. The second part of stitching glue is the gluing part. We used Gorilla Glue to hold the very front of the stern together and epoxy for the rest. After cleaning off the tops of the zip ties, we put duct tape on the underside of the boat so that the epoxy couldn't all drip out from the seams where it was supposed to be. Without cutting the zip ties short, it wouldn't have been possible to put the duct tape on. So at this point, the zip ties were still in place, but with just the nubs. It was very tedious putting duct tape around all of the zip tie nubs, but it was very important because unthickened epoxy is very runny and would have just all ran out without the duct tape. I believed that the zip ties would have been easier to remove after the epoxying, but they were not. And I think this is why most people use wire, which you can pull out through the epoxy, unlike zip ties that get stuck with all the little bumps in the plastic. For gluing the seams between the panels, we used a faster curing epoxy so that it hardened quickly and did not run out. The way we spread the epoxy was with a Ziploc bag that had a hole in one end, and this allowed us to put a somewhat even bead along the seam. Because epoxy is so runny, we had to go back and clean up all the spots where it dripped down. We had to do this 3 times for each of the joints between panels. After gluing the panels together, we could begin removing the zip ties. I also used the same glue to secure the transom to the boat, as well as a couple of screws, so it really wouldn't go anywhere. All of this gluing really sets the boat shape and stopped it from being flexible and moving around. It is important to have a really well attached transom because it carries all of the forces from the motor, and it could rip off if it was not strong enough or attached well enough. This is another reason why it is made from 2 sheets of wood glued together as opposed to 1. Both of the other 2 bulkheads were secured this way, except with a nail gun to hold it in place rather than screws because of the thinner wood. I never got the shape of the forward bulkhead quite right, so there was a small gap that I'd go back and fill with the fillet compound. I'm sorry for the camera shake, the GoPro stabilization was not happy being rocked in my boat. We painted epoxy on both the bulkhead and the boat to secure it in place. After nailing, I went back and added more epoxy to make sure it didn't go anywhere. All of the bulkheads were done in fast drying epoxy, which is why it has the reddish tint. Next, I moved on to installing the center bulkhead. The center bulkhead has a hole in the very bottom to allow water to drain through it. Although it is covered by a floorboard, water can still drain all the way to the back of the boat and out the drain plug. This particular sheet of plywood was not cooperating and wanted to bend backwards. Quick thinking and a spare piece of wood saved the day. We left the support wood attached until the bulkhead was solidified to the boat and could not move. These rear bulkheads showed the entire process from after the board has been rough cut to after the bulkheads have been epoxied in. The only things missing are filleting and fiberglass taping, which comes later. Of course, I have to start by drawing out the bulkheads to be cut and using a handy dandy straight edge to get the lines right. Next comes cutting, and then we're on to installing. I mixed up some epoxy and started a very similar process to the other bulkheads. My boat has 3 watertight compartments. The first one is made from the forward bulkhead and the seat that covers it, but the back 2 are made out of the rear bulkhead pieces, the transom, the sponson, and the rear seat. Cutting holes in the transom allows access into the back sponson, which you will see in episode 2. It was very important to get these glued in properly so that water could not leak through them. I used duct tape to hold the pieces together before nailing them in. The watertight compartments are made from 2 pieces of wood at 90 degrees to each other, creating a box that I can store stuff in. The hole in each side of the transom allows access into the back sponson compartment. All these compartments have a circular lid that screws on and off for easy access while keeping the water out. All of the wood surfaces have a coating of epoxy, and that is what I was starting to do here. Removing all of the zip ties was a pain in the butt. They did not want to come out, and we ended up just clipping a lot of them at the wood. We used wire cutters so that we could get as close to flush as possible to avoid more sanding later. Not that there wasn't sanding to prepare the wood, so after sanding and preparing the wood, we were able to start filleting. The filleting compound is made from epoxy, wood flour to thicken it, and fumed silica to make it easier to smooth. For all of the fillets on the boat, we placed down a bead of the compound, then went back and smoothed it with a popsicle stick. This stuff sucked to sand, so it was important to get it right and not leave any globs. I had 2 helpers for the small front area, so it went quickly. We also filled the small gap between the bulkhead and the boat on the left side to seal it so that it was airtight and to strengthen it. We also filled all the zip tie holes as best we could. We filleted from front to back, making sure to get all of the cracks and holes filled. All of the joints in my boat are first filleted, then taped with epoxy and fiberglass. So that means every joint in between floorboards and every bulkhead is filleted in place. There's a great video explaining the proper technique and mechanics behind filleting that I will leave a link to in the description. The video does a much better job explaining it than I would ever be able to. As you can see, I had many helpers and I was grateful for every one of them. I used 2 popsicle sticks, one that was flat on the end to use as a scraper to get rid of any excess that got squeezed out, and the other to round the joint so that the fiberglass could bend around them. For all of the filleting, I used a slow cure epoxy which had a pot life of 30 minutes to an hour. This was necessary because it took a long time to first mix the compound and then squeeze all of the compound out of the plastic bag and get it shaped correctly. The combination of filleting and fiberglass tape is very strong and is what holds the boat together. The next video will include most of the fiberglass taping as well as the installation of the seats. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2 of building a Tango Skiff 14.